All right, very good. Normally I'm the funny one, but today I'm just going to have to be the devastatingly handsome one. Hey, Sarah, before you run, I need all of the raffle entries. So bring those up at some point, not just yet. All right, so that was Sean Eli, comedian and executive director of the Ivy League of Comedy. He is also a comedy writer, and he specializes in very clean, clever corporate comedy, humorous copy, and political comedy from varied points of view. We saw one tonight. He will be performing live here today. Actually, I think he just did perform live here today. Very good. All right, so that was Sean Eli. Thank you. My name is David Carlos. I am a longtime host here at Disruptive Technologists. I've known Lauren for a very, very large number of years. I'm not that old yet, but I'm starting to feel it. And it's been one of the highlights of my professional career, being here and meeting all the people and having a great time and learning about interesting topics every single month. So I would like to just give Lauren a big thank you for organizing this event. She never puts herself in this stuff as one of the sponsors to thank, but she's the one who created the entire thing. So thank you, Lauren. All right, very good. One of the people we're going to thank is this little company. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. You may have heard of it. It's Microsoft. They are the ones who are hosting us. They do so every month. It's really wonderful that we've got this great big space. This is one of the biggest crowds we've ever had. We've got all the walls down. So it's really wonderful. I am going to mention one of their programs. They do have this program called BizSpark, which is really incredible. It's for business startups. Thank you. It is basically where they give you unlimited access to all of the infinite technology of the universe, and as long as it's made by Microsoft, which I think 99% of it is, right? And for free. So you can build your business. You have access to Azure Cloud. You have access to installed products, and it's really a fabulous program. Reach out to anybody associated with Disruptive Technologists to learn more, and we'll point you in the right direction. So that is Microsoft. Then we've got Peloso Barnes. Okay, now Peloso Barnes, it's the Peloso Barnes Group. Okay, we've got they're a concierge wealth management group who works with creative and passionate people to help protect their financial aspirations. And that's pretty good. Now, Julia, did she come into the room? I don't think I got a chance to meet her. No, Julia's not here? Come on, raise your hand if you're here. She's hiding. Are you Julia? No, you look like you could be Julia. All right, well, her partner, Eric, he's in the back over there. Eric Hayden, they're here along with two members of their team. Nauka, who you probably met up front. She was manning the front desk when you first came in. And Kevin Clare. Who was giving technology demos of their financial literacy program in the hall. So if you didn't see that, make sure you check it out. Now, if you're interested in their financial literacy program, they're happy to send you an invite. They can access the program for free, and they are giving away a Lima personal cloud device. I don't know what a Lima personal cloud device is. I feel like I should know that. Obviously, I didn't do my homework. Okay. And copies of the book Breakout Nations by Ruchir Sharma, and portable charging devices, all kinds of great stuff. Put your business card in when you come in. If you can time travel, just go back in time, drop your business card. If you can't, do it after. They'll be collecting them and giving away those items at the end. Now, they have also brought an investment research piece discussing machine learning and AI as it relates to investment management. And they've offered everyone here to join in on a conference call with a member of the research team to learn more. The Peloso Barnes Group is at Morgan Stanley, who are leading the industry and putting technology in the hands of its advisors to better serve their clients. So Kevin's over there. Feel free to say hi and make yourself known and get involved and enjoy. Sorry, I said Kevin. Eric is over there. He will take care of you. Okay, very good. Funding Post. Okay, Funding Post, they're the ones who provided those delicious gourmet sandwiches that you've got outside, and they have been sponsors for a long time. For 16 years, Funding Post has worked to bring entrepreneurs together with leading investors worldwide. Funding Post believes that it is important to reach investors in every medium possible, both online and offline. Longtime food sponsor, we thank them very much. Delicious, delicious food. Oh, by the way, Microsoft, that ginormous amount of pizza that must be eaten, otherwise it gets thrown out, Microsoft. And then Hint Water. So I'm really excited because Hint Water has been here for a long time sponsoring, but today we actually have people from Hint Water, and hold on, from Hint Water, the delicious, refreshing, low sugar, hold on, no sugar, see, it's so low it's no. Hold on. Hint Water, it's good stuff, drink it. Dana Stevens, she's got over 13 years of experience as a vice president. She is our wine sponsor, just got to prime everybody. So yes, big round of applause for wine. She's been a vice president and director focusing on cost reduction, globalization, strategic planning, process analysis, and excellence in project management while increasing customer and employee satisfaction. She's got a BS degree in engineering from UC Berkeley and an MS in computer science from Columbia University. Wow, spent a lot of time at school. Very good, very good. And then we have Harry Greeley. There's lots of people who support this amazing event, so I apologize. It's taken some time to get through. But Harry, he's a senior director at Cushman & Wakefield. He's a top 100 producer. He's developed client relationships with a broad spectrum of firms, including domestic and international, both small and large, and provides consulting services to many institutional investors, enabling them to identify suitable commercial real estate investment and purchase opportunities. So he provides free commercial space consulting to anybody. He's not here tonight, but if you would like to talk to somebody who knows a lot about commercial real estate, let us know. Contact Lauren or me or anybody. We'll put you in contact. And then we've got Defy Gravity, who is our new cookie sponsor. So if you're munching on one of those delicious chocolate chip cookies, yes, I see some guilty parties. I know I'm one of them. I had 2 of them. They are an adventure travel show. It's a podcast. Each week, you can meet people who travel to change their lives. Some live life always on the road. Others climb mountains and teach people how to do the same. Some look for exotic foods, and not only will they bring you their stories, but help you to attain adventures. They can help you, guide you to your attainable adventures. Wow, that's exciting. So Defy Gravity. And then we've got Kristen. This is very interesting. So Kristen Olander. She comes to us from the Healthcare Professionals Alliance, the HCPNA. I don't know, better hear that acronym. I'm going to add that to my repertoire. It's a specialized team integrating 2 first-of-its-kind, innovative, and unique technologies into the health and wellness community. So the first is that thing out there. It's a biophotonic scanner. This is a real thing. A biophotonic scanner. It's a non-invasive nutritional testing device to measure your individual antioxidant levels. And the Age-Lock Me, which is going to be very important for you to know because I'm giving one of them away in just a few minutes, which is the first smart delivery device for customized personal care. So think all your lotions and potions, all in one smart device. And with that, let me actually do that raffle because we've been collecting all this great stuff. All right. I have to somehow randomize this in such a way that I can't tell with tactile. Okay. Somebody, you. Close your eyes. Okay. Pick a number between 1 and 50. 49. Pick a smaller number between 1 and 50. 10. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Matthew Hagen from Some Innovation. Raise your hand. Where are you? There you go, man. You are the proud owner of an Age-Lock Me. So if you don't know what this is, you better go out there and get a presentation on what this thing is, because your wife, girlfriend, daughter, husband, sister, some female person in your life is going to die for this. Or, if you're like me and you can wear pink very comfortably, you're going to love it. Okay, so come find me. With that, let me introduce our what do we call you? You're our moderator. That's the word I was looking for. That's Kevin. So Kevin Bianco, he's a partner of BDO USA. He performs audits of public and private companies and assists them with the financial and operational aspects of their business. Kevin has industry expertise in life sciences, private equity activities, SEC public companies, tech, manufacturing, professional services, and financial services. God, is there anything you don't know? I don't think so. Kevin Bianco, everybody. Thank you.
Good evening. Lauren, again, always thank you for the opportunity to be here to be part of a great platform. I'm going to be here for 2 minutes. I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves, and we're going to have 2 presentations brief, and then I'll come back up and we'll dive right into the presentations. How's that? I'm going to start to my immediate left, my longtime friend of 25 years, David Sorin. David, would you like to give a minute or two overview of your...
I am glad. Can you all hear me? Nope. I very rarely need a microphone.
That's true.
All right, can you hear me now? Thank you. Kevin is right. We've known each other for 25 years. We actually met when we were 10-year-old prodigies working on an IPO where I was issuer's counsel and Kevin was the CPA working on the audit in connection with the public offering. We have been friends and colleagues ever since. Certainly one of the finest accountants, financial advisors I know. So thank you, Kevin. I only have 3
singles, Dave.
Now listen, no payments required, no problem. My name is Dave Sorin. I am the partner in charge of the venture capital and emerging growth company practice at McCarter English. We are a very large but not too large law firm with offices from Boston to Northern Virginia. And I came to this by way of both being a CPA in Big 8 accounting before I ever went to law school, and then ultimately law school here in New York to a very large Wall Street law firm. And when I was a young associate, I realized that I really hated representing big companies. And that was a problem when you work for a Wall Street law firm. And I asked for the assignment of representing, and our guys from the financial world will appreciate this, Morgan Stanley's high-tech group. When I was a young associate, Morgan Stanley was a very large client of the law firm that I worked for, and they had started a high-tech group when I was a young associate, as though technology was something new in the late 1980s. And that's where my love for companies like yours began, originally representing the money in technology companies, and later on deciding I really wanted to represent the companies themselves, and ultimately joined a very large East Coast law firm that was sort of the West Coast equivalent of Wilson Sonsini. And 10 years ago, did that just blow? No. 10 years ago, I decided that the law firm model was irretrievably broken. Billing rates were way too high, and the delivery model depended on the pyramid, where work got pushed down to largely inexperienced attorneys. And so in the depths of recession in 2008, when certainly nobody was thinking we needed more law firms, I decided to create a law firm that was a rectangular model and had a completely different delivery system and a completely different billing rate model to try to bring rates down to a more sensible level. And almost 3 years ago, after being an independent firm for about 7 years, we merged with McCarter English because we realized that we needed the bigger platform and the depth of resources. But we only went there because McCarter committed to keeping our delivery model and our business paradigm in place. And I think it's only appropriate that we're here, thanks to Lauren, talking about disruptive technologies, because we thought we were a disruptive law firm. And one of the things that we live and die by are the innovation by people like you who are disrupting the normal business paradigms and changing the way things get done now in virtually every industry. So I'm delighted to be here, and I thank you guys very much.
Thank you, David. Bruce?
My name is Bruce Weed, and I work at IBM. I'm responsible for business development and working with developers around coding and activities like that in New York City, but also up and down the East Coast. I focus a lot with startups, but I also work with enterprise-type corporations. My background really started, my passion around technology was around e-commerce, and I got involved early on with a lot of startups in that endeavor. And then, of course, we hit the bubble. And then I got involved in data, and I started to do analytics, things of this nature. And that led to big data in 2010, which was a new emerging area. I had the opportunity to work once again focused on startups. I was out in Silicon Valley working with a lot of the venture funds and bringing folks on board, integrating with our Hadoop platform at the time. And that led into activity around Watson and AI. And from there, that led to IoT. And then I got involved in blockchain. So now I take all these technologies that I have in my background and really work with, again, startups and enterprise corporations to figure out how to best solution architect what they're trying to do in their particular environment. And it's a pleasure to be here. I look forward to the panel. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Heather?
Hey everyone, my name is Heather Shapiro. I'm a technical evangelist here at Microsoft, so welcome, and please take the pizza, because we cannot donate it, unfortunately, so take what you can. But like I said, I'm a tech evangelist here, and essentially what I do, I work with students, startups, developers, similar to what you were mentioning, all throughout the East Coast, and talk to them about how to engage with technology and how to get started. So we do a lot of proof of concepts with customers. And my background is computer science and statistics, so I just graduated 2 years ago, and so now at Microsoft I focus on bots, machine learning, AI, anything with data. Woo!
Thank you. Bob?
Hey everybody, my name is Tom Eck. I'm the CTO at IBM for Industry Platforms, where we are focusing on taking our assets and applying them to certain vertical industries. And right now we're focusing on financial services, so we're catering both to our big clients like Morgan Stanley as well as fintechs and startups. So I'll show you a little bit more in a little quick demo that I'm going to give you. But my background is I'm a software guy, so I've been writing software for more years than I will admit. And I'm really more of a startup guy trapped in a executive at IBM body kind of thing. So I totally get where developers are coming from. I also was an early AI researcher back when it was hard to do. I'm just kidding. It's still hard to do, but it's really powerful. So I'm hoping to show you guys a little bit about what we're doing over at IBM and how we're making it easy for both the enterprises and the fintechs to bring cognitive capabilities into applications, including chatbots.
Thank you. And Howie Schwartz is, I'm a fellow partner with Howie in the ARC Fund here in New York, and Howie, it's great to have you on this panel.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, everyone. My name is Howie Schwartz. I'm leading a startup team just 15 blocks away. It's why I was a few minutes late. Startups are hard. Don't let anyone tell you they're easy. So the team that I'm currently leading is crowded, and we're building chatbots for recruitment marketing that hopefully we can talk a little bit about tonight. So how many people here have applied for a job online in the last decade? How many people here have not gotten a response? Keep your hand up. It's called the job seeker black hole. The reason why I starting companies 20 years ago was because I was constantly in the job seeker black hole, which probably means people didn't want to hire me, but for whatever point, they never reply. So what we're doing is actually building recruitment marketing advertisement that's delivered through bots and trying to understand engagement levels with both candidates and if they're excited, if they're happy, with the process, and also with recruiters, helping them to find and contact some of the hardest to reach talent. We're actually in the IBM developer program. Thank you for all of the free Blue Mix credits. We appreciate it. So on the other side, as Kevin mentioned, I was one of the founding investors along with Kevin at the Archangel Fund, and I met Lauren at least 10, maybe 15 years ago, I think, when we were both, 25, if we want to stay with Kevin's age at that time. And I co-founded at that time Funding Post with Joe Rubin. And then we created ARC, and then in addition to that, I had two successful venture-backed companies and exits in the mobile ad tech space over the past decade, and I'm an investor in about a dozen venture funds, too many capital calls to keep up with, and some angel deals. So I've sat on both sides in the past almost 2 decades as an operating startup and an investor. And I will tell you, the investor hat is so much easier. You just go home and it goes well for the day, or it doesn't, and it's all okay. The startup hat is much harder. So thanks again for having me.
Thanks, Howie. Heather, you ready to start us off?
Okay, let's see if technology works. It's always the struggle. May take a second. Cool.
We in your way.
No. Should be. Oh, cool. Awesome. So, like I said, my name's Heather Shapiro. I'm a technical evangelist here at Microsoft. And so we actually right now have a Microsoft bot framework, which allows you as developers to create a bot more easily that you can put on different channels. And I'll show that a little bit in a second, but what I wanted to talk about first was kind of how chatbots work in general. So I know not everyone is a developer here, so understanding just like high level of what's actually going on when you talk to a bot, I thought could be very helpful. So some of the this is like the most basic of chatbots as well, but some of what chatbots are looking for, they're really made up of like intents and entities. So when you think of an intent, it's what the action Thank you. It's the action that the user wants the bot to complete. So you might say, like, what is the weather? And the question that you're asking is weather, and you want the bot to tell you that. And then the entity is the important keyword or category that will allow the bot to know like where you want it. So if you say, what is the weather in London? Then that means London is the entity, and what is the weather is the intent. So yeah, so intents could be asking for a time, asking to send an alarm, and then the entity itself would be time, location, things like that. So if we look at this example like I just said, so what is the weather like in London now? There's different ways that people could say it. So if you say weather, you know the intent is to get weather. And if you say London and now, the entities are London's the topic, now is the date time. So these are really important factors when you're building a bot, things that the bot needs to be able to understand what you want to do and what are the parameters around it. But people can also say it differently, right? So they could say, is it cold in London? Or is it cold in London today? And the bot should still know that it's asking for weather and where it is, London and today. So using natural language processing, you're able to make a distinction between those because not everyone's going to say it the same way, and there's tons of different utterances. So we have a bunch of chatbots that you can go play around with. I'll show a couple. But with the bot framework, we have like a Skyscanner bot, StubHub, different things. And so I created one last year at the White House. And so it's pretty easy to actually get started. You can do a Node, C#, and then once you develop that code, I'll let you play around with it, but you can actually add it to a channel just by clicking one of these buttons, and it walks you through like how to set up the API. But otherwise, you don't have to change your code at all. You just make it once and then deploy it to a new channel. So you could just create it in that Node SDK, deploy it as a web API, because that's essentially what a chatbot is, and then just click, okay, I want it on Facebook, okay, I want it on Cortana, I want it here and there. And so you don't have to change any code, you just have to set up an API key. So that's one of the really awesome things about the bot framework. And one that we have that's pretty fun to play around with is Project Murphy. So it does like what if questions. Well, let's see. So I said, what if I were a Disney princess? So ask me to upload a picture that will only stay for 10 minutes. Okay, and then it tells me that it was received, and it puts my face onto a picture of a Disney princess. So it's using things like cognitive services, which is a bunch of machine learning APIs that we have, trying to do image recognition, looking for the picture that I have, picking out my face, looking through Bing image search to pick out pictures of Disney princesses, and then it's transplanting my face onto the face that they detect there. So there's so many options of things you can build with bots, but this one just is a fun one that you can play around with as well. And thank you. I'll pass it off back to you.
Thank you. Tom, you ready? Thanks. You good?
Where did the... This is worse than my home theater setup. Anyways, so does this work?
Yes.
I was talking to this here. Okay. So that was a great intro from what Heather said. It was a great setup to what I wanted to show you really quickly. I just want to point out that it's incredibly difficult to build what's called a conversational interface. So you think about, you guys are all familiar with web user interfaces, mobile user interfaces. You even know about phone user interfaces, right? When you call and you get the press 1 to do this, press 2 to do that, and you know that it can be incredibly frustrating if they're not set up intuitively and it doesn't react the way that you would expect it to. Well, chatbots take that to 100x more complexity. So kind of figuring out what the intents are, right, which are kind of the actions, and the entities, which are kind of the what you want to act on. Those are pretty straightforward, and I think most of us can get our head around that. Building the dialogue, as it's called, which kind of stitches those together, is very challenging, and I think that's a whole new job category that's coming on. That's going to be very, very important. And if we don't get this right as a community, the end users are quickly going to be disillusioned and not want to deal with chatbots anymore. And I think we're starting to see a little bit of that right now. But I'm very bullish that this will end up being a very, very important technology. So that being said, at IBM, I look after this platform here called the IBM Cloud for Financial Services. I'm not going to be here to give you this is not a commercial, but has everybody in here everybody heard the term API? API, right? Okay. So API is kind of the universal way that machines talk to each other on the internet, and it's really one of the things that's made the explosion in technology and our capabilities really take off in the last decade or so. And chatbots are very they use APIs in two ways. And one of the ways is what you plug into a chatbot for it to do something useful. So the examples that Heather showed was very, very cool. I know my daughter would love that, that little chatbot there. And I'm focused, though, on financial services. So kind of applying similar concepts, but into the financial services industry. So we have it's an API-centric worldview. And in our marketplace, we have not just APIs and data and other assets from IBM, but from fintechs. So if you're a fintech and you have something that you think you would like to expose as an API through our catalog, come see me. And the point of this is that we can very easily get your great API wired into chatbots. And I'm sure Heather would love to hear from you too, because that's really what powers, the whole point is the consumer is trying to get something done or get a question answered or move some money or ask questions about the weather. Where does that information come from? It has to come from some source, and APIs are the easiest way to expose that, and from a developer's point of view, and to monetize it. So there's lots of money to be made here, and conversation and chatbots and digital assistants is really going to drive, I think, a lot of revenue for the so-called API economy. On the other side, if you build a chatbot, kind of the back end, and I am only a little bit aware of Microsoft's implementation, but as Heather showed you, you can kind of write the chatbot once and then plug it into numerous channels. Did I get that right? So you could plug it into Slack, you could plug it into SMS, et cetera.
So that's also a beauty of building your chatbot the right way around APIs. So what I want to show you is kind of the, I take no great pride of ownership. I wrote this thing over the course of a couple of weekends. Yeah, I'm a developer too, but, and this is not the world's best chatbot, so do not beat me up on that. But what I'm trying to show here is how easy it is to build a chatbot from a bunch of different APIs. So IBM has you guys have probably heard of Watson. We have a product called Watson Conversation, which lets you build these conversational interfaces, okay? So this is an actual video of my phone. I set up a text number, a phone number from the service called Twilio, which is a great, I guess they're a startup, that it's basically SMS as a service. So you're going to see me texting to this phone number that I just happen to call IBM Watson in my contact list. And I'm going to ask it questions about my financial portfolio. The portfolio is not real. If it was, the decimal point is in the wrong place, so do not hit me up later for anything. All right. Go. Okay. Okay, so this is not, that part's not required, but I just wanted to show off that there's some, we could do personalization. It recognized my phone number. That's how it knows who I am. How's my portfolio doing today? So you can see that the intent there is to ask how my portfolio is. So let me just stop that for a second there. What we did here also is used another third-party fintech that's in our catalog called Xignite. They're a San Francisco-based startup. And that's how I got market data for the portfolio. And I'll show you, we have an API that is basically lets you manage a portfolio with bonds and stocks, and it could be even mortgages and loans, et cetera. And I threw in a couple of emojis because I could. And then the thing here is I want you to see how I'm using very colloquial, language there, right? So I didn't program the chatbot to recognize these colloquialisms. The way that you train Watson is you give it 5 examples of the way somebody might ask that question. So I basically entered in 5 ways somebody might say, tell me what's in my portfolio. What does my portfolio consist of? What are my holdings, right? So I give 5 examples, and Watson Conversation does a really good job of kind of extrapolating to a myriad ways that people can ask that question. I'm actually quite impressed by it. So just wanted to point out that you can be very conversational, right? This feels like you might be talking to somebody. Again, this is for illustration purposes. This is just an example of how we can, you can push multimedia into chat interface, right? This is just using, iMessage on there's no app installed here on the phone. Now, want to pause this here for a second. So I call this the $3 million question because this is accessing a product from IBM called Algorithmics, which is like some really super high-end quantitative finance modeling software, which has only been affordable to like hedge funds and big banks because it's a really sophisticated piece of software. It takes forever to get it installed, but it's like super powerful. And is one of the best in the market. But it's really hard to integrate with and really hard to buy, and only a few companies can afford it. So what we've done is we've now democratized access to it through APIs. So now in 5 minutes, you can integrate any app, including a chatbot, to ask this question. So I'm going to ask the question, what's the impact of my portfolio of a 5% drop in the S&P 500? Like I said, this would probably cost $3 million a year, but now you can access it through an API. So there was a tremendous, so even though that looked really, really simple, okay, the math behind what just happened there is incredible. And my only point here is this, right, is that you can integrate that into your chatbot through an API, and that's why it's all about APIs. You probably heard about them a lot, and that's why they're so powerful. Anyway, so then I just give a couple of little goofy demos here where I throw in some emojis because the millennials love them, and God bless them. Yeah?
Are you able to ask for any further advice on changing application on upcoming events, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't want to take up too much time, but I can definitely, maybe it'll come up in the panel, but yes, and we can talk about it more if you want.
You can do it.
We have the APIs to do it. It's not integrated in this demo. Yeah. So I'll stop there unless there's any other questions right now. Otherwise, okay, question?
Explain just very briefly the difference between an avatar and a chatbot.
I think an avatar is kind of a representation of an individual. I think, like, I have an avatar. If you looked at my avatar, it kind of looks like a cartoon version of me, which I'm already kind of a cartoon version.
The avatar would be the same as with the chatbot, but just with the physical representation.
Yeah, I think you can say that. Yeah.
Blockchain, there's something there about the IBM blockchain with BlueMax. Could you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah. So again, this is a financial services cloud that we're building. So for developers to build, next-gen financial services applications, and we think that more and more applications are going to be, focused on AI, blockchain, conversational interfaces, a lot of things like that, and we're going to bring basically all of our assets to bear. So in the blockchain world, I'll give you an example. There's something going on in Europe called PSD2. It has to do with payments. It's just a regulation. Don't worry about what it stands for. But part of it is that you as a consumer get to authorize, let's say Uber, right? You want to instead of just using credit cards to pay for your Uber rides, you want to be able to pay from your bank account directly. That's what's going on in Europe. It'll eventually make its way over here, I think. But one of the really important things there is identity. So how do we know who you are, and how does the system track that you gave Uber permission to access your bank account? So I think that's a very powerful application of IBM blockchain, and we have a product called Secure Key, and that's going to be part. So my point here is it's included in this catalog because I believe blockchain is very important to financial services applications, and we want to make it as easy to integrate with blockchain as it is to integrate with these other APIs. That's kind of the story here.
Thank you.
Right.
No, that's it.
That's it. All right, I got the cut sign.
Yep. I'm sorry I didn't do that well.
I took enough time.
You get to
Thank
it.
you.
Who was it that had the question? If you want to raise your hands. I'll give you the first question as soon as we're done. How's that? Fair enough? I just want to get the panel going. I don't want to hold much. I'm sure you'll remember it. Okay. How we're going to start. Thank you, Lauren. We're going to start off with some general questions just to get everybody lubed up, greased up, and get into the flow of conversation, and then we'll get into more specifics by panelists. As you can tell from the background, they're very diverse. Any questions that come about during the conversation, I will try and scan the room as frequently as I can, and we will take questions as we go. Okay? Fair enough? I promise to give you the first question. Okay. All right, so panelists, just in general. You okay? Thanks, Heather. You good? All right. Just in general, we heard a little bit about chatbots, and where's this technology ranked today relative to the other technologies that are in the marketplace? Just a general observation from the panelists, please. Dave, you want to start? Feel free.
We can talk about from a finance or M&A
Just
perspective.
in general, where it ranks today as far as importance, where the opportunities lie compared to what else is out there in the marketplace.
So I'll answer that sort of from the perspective of a lawyer rather than an investor, obviously. But in terms of my own practice, the number of investors, angels, venture capitalists, private equity, interested in this convergence of Internet of Things, data, bots, artificial intelligence, machine learning is absolutely incredible. We're doing more transactions in this space than virtually any other technology sector. So from that perspective, I think it's extraordinarily high. And there's a related issue. You and I were actually on a panel together talking about this. We're not just talking about companies that are AI companies or bots companies. We're talking about how that gets integrated into businesses that are not technology companies themselves, and how that has an impact on the valuation of those companies, ultimately on the monetization opportunities that exist for those entrepreneurs. I think it's absolutely critical.
Thank you. Bruce?
Yeah, so I would just add to that I think it's very important as startups are looking at how they integrate technology, that they start to use some of these new technologies like chatbots. As an example, we worked with a company called Rare Carrot, and they're like a kayak for diamonds. They actually use a chatbot. You can go out there and type in, I'm looking for a diamond, and then it will ask you questions, and you write back answers and go back and forth in a conversation. And it just makes it a lot easier, a lot more fun, interactive, obviously. That's the whole nature of it. But you'll start to see more and more of that come about, and I think that's important because that's sort of the evolution. Now, I think, ultimately things will get into even more advanced types of chatbots and how you'll interface with particular different devices. But I think it is an area that if you're not already starting to look at that, you should take a strong look at it.
Thank you. Heather?
Let's see if it works. Okay, yeah. So I think right now bots are an ever-growing technology, so they're constantly advancing, but it's a great time for companies to kind of jump on that bandwagon, especially with you can put chatbots in so many places where millennials are already using them. So like Facebook, people are already using Facebook. They're already using these mediums, so it makes it a lot easier as a company to connect with a specific audience. So if you're trying to reach that audience, they're already using it, so it's already something they're used to. There's no learning curve, so it makes it a lot easier for the users themselves.
Is this thing on? Okay, cool. I think that chatbots are both overhyped and underhyped at the same time. I think that they're overhyped, and there's been some disappointments, I would say, from the consumers who have thought that they're talking to Siri or something like that, and it didn't respond to them. It didn't understand what they were saying because those conversations weren't developed to understand everything, right? So, but I also think that this is we're going to get through that. First of all, I'm bullish on that. But I also think that the way that chat is being used today, and I'm also let's just call it conversational interface, right? Let's not even call it chat, because I'm going to stick voice under here too. So Siri, Alexa, Cortana, all my competitors, which I use all of them, they're great. But so far, if you notice, they're all reactive, right? You ask a question and you get a response. I would love to come down to my kitchen in the morning as I'm making my coffee, and my Amazon Alexa or whatever I have tells me, hey, Tom, you're going to miss the 8 o'clock train. There's another one at 8:20, or New Jersey Transit's running late as usual, or something like that. So
I need a lot of intelligence for that part.
Every morning I get that. So anyway, but I like the term digital assistant. Maybe it's a little cockney, but I actually like it because it should be assisting. It should be assisting us, and a good assistant kind of becomes proactive and can, what's the right word, kind of predict your next move. And so I think that's another part where AI is going to come on board a little bit more. It's going to get to learn how I'm asking to be helped. It's going to learn my routines. It's going to learn things like that. And it's truly going to be an assistant, and it's going to be looking out for me. There's a question from the back there that was asking about maybe news surveillance. Let me know when there's something I need to know about. I shouldn't have to be polling and saying, what's new, what's new, what's new, what's new. You tell me when there's something I should know. So anyway, I think there's an incredible future ahead for this, and I just love the combination of the AI, the natural language processing, and really it's going to be a big skill that you're going to be hiring for, I think, is the design of these conversational interfaces.
Thank you. Howie?
From the investor side, it's really overhyped, and every fund that I'm involved with is probably seeing either ML, AI, chatbot added to everything, regardless if the company's doing it. Like, we make cookies, but there's machine learning or something. So it's really overdone on that side. From a company perspective, it's really important. Forget about just to raise capital. So I think that becomes a question from investors, like, what is your strategy, if not today, then near term for ML, AI, and or chatbots? So I think it is important for companies from the operator perspective. It's really hard. And the reason why it's so hard is you can't find the talent. Anyone who, from a development standpoint, who played around with a bot once or like puts that in a LinkedIn profile is getting pounded so hard from by recruiters on LinkedIn every day until they like have to like delete themselves off LinkedIn. So it's impossible to recruit the talent to do it. So even though it's really important, it's really hard. So I think the frameworks that we're talking about today are super important. Unless your company is going to build their own framework because you are a chatbot company that other people are building bots, which is to me the only reason why you probably need your own framework. You should work with someone on the panel's framework here because it is really hard, not because it's just a hard technology to solve. You can't find the talent. And that's not even a New York versus San Francisco thing. You can't find the talent anywhere. So I think it's really important to realize that as business leaders, unless you are literally building a platform for other people to build bots on, you cannot build it yourself because you just can't recruit the people. It's impossible.
Thanks,
Question?
Howie. Question.
My company represents software development teams, so this is pretty interesting to me. I don't think any of them are doing bots right now or implementing bots, but I wonder if there's a debate about who will own the bot, whether the individual will say, I use Cortana or I use Alexa and I want all of my apps to deal with that bot, versus having to go to each different app and those apps have their own sort of technology behind it, which to me would imply that how I speak to it, or it will respond differently depending on the bot that's behind it.
Yeah, I think my comment on that would be unless there's some sort of home device that's restrictive in a walled garden, like if you're dealing with an Amazon Echo, or you're dealing with Alexa, you're dealing with Alexa. But if you're dealing with an app that's installed on my phone or another voice interface, I think it's going to be open for the consumers, and it's really hard from a company perspective because you can't really afford to develop and integrate all of these different voice interfaces and other APIs. So from a company perspective, it's kind of like you roll out what you want and hope it works for the consumer. I think it's very, very hard to be able to roadmap something like that and develop it.
Thanks, Howie. Yes.
Is it inevitable, actually, just connecting on that, is it inevitable that there's going to be one API that will rule them all?
So can I say, I think you're hitting on exactly the right thing about APIs, right? So these bots, or whatever you want to call them, they're a channel, right? They don't really want the bot. They want whatever the great thing is that the API does. You're just making it accessible through either typing or through speaking to access it more easily. So the first and most important thing is that you have a great asset, which is the API. And then like Heather showed you, you can plug that in to every bot platform in the world if you wanted to. Now back to this gentleman's question over here. I think I would answer your question about, you're talking about a platform, and I think that I have to say that Amazon, I think, has done a really good job with Alexa. Alexa is a platform where you can integrate kind of discrete conversational interfaces. So it's through one device, it's through one account that knows you, but through that you're accessing all these different types of conversational capabilities. And I think that's, another reason I like that SMS bot that I did is because you didn't have to install an app, right? Aren't we all sick and tired of installing an app to do one little thing, right? So why can't I just text a phone number so that I know like what my where I am in the queue for this restaurant? I was at some restaurant the other day. They wanted me to install an app just so I can know where I was waiting in line. Like, no, I'm not doing that. I should just, subscribe to a text, something like that. So I think platform is extremely important here, and that's where you consolidate those capabilities.
Yeah, let me just add to that too, though. We got to be careful, right? Because when you start to have conversation, it's not all the same. Let me explain. I get a lot of people, they go out and they Google something, right? And then they don't get the results they want. And they're like, I don't understand it. I can't find this. I can't find that. Well, there's an art to Googling, right? There really is. If you want to find things, you got to line up your keywords a certain way. And it doesn't matter whether you're typing it in or you're doing that through speech. It's the same thing. Same thing with Siri or any of these types of devices. Where it takes the next level up, right, is when you really get into the natural language processing and the machine learning, because now you're going to another level, right? It's not, you don't have to say it in the exact same way. I have Alexa at home. I get all these latest technologies. I'm talking to Alexa. If you don't phrase it exactly correctly, she doesn't understand. She comes back, oh, I don't know what you mean. I can't find that. So I think the real, where this is going to take off like a rocket is once the systems get to be where they can really understand pretty much whatever you say and whatever vernacular you're using, then that's when it's really going to be beneficial. We have a company we work with, Satisfy, who did a project for Macy's. And what they did is it's a bot. You go into Macy's, you get on your phone, you type in what you're looking for. So somebody might say, I'm looking for a pair of pants, men's pants. It'll go in there, say, these are the types of designers we have, this is where it's located. But what happens if that same person goes, I'm looking for trousers, right? With some of these other systems, it may go, what the hell's a trouser, right? I don't know what that is. That's where we need to make that, where that really bridge is going to take off, where I think you'll see these things become more successful.
I think from the
question, ma'am, did you have a dissenting opinion? I thought I heard something you didn't agree.
No, yeah, I use Alexa and it learns. I mean, that's how machine learning works. It's like they are able to listen to your responses, and they know how you ask questions, and they'll be able to put that into their system, and they'll be able to understand it differently. I mean, this is how I actually build on Alexa. This is my CTO right here. And we build on it, and we added intentions and how Alexa should respond, and we put it in there ourselves. But then we get surprised every day, and when we ask questions differently, that she's able to understand.
Just one really quick.
She gets smarter every day.
One really quick comment from the company side when you're building this stuff. That what we're talking about there is really more a concept of what I would call like general AI, where you ask Alexa, what's the weather? And then 10 minutes later, you ask for a stock updater, and then update, and then 10 minutes later, you ask for an Uber, and 10 minutes later, you ask for a flower delivery. That's really, really hard, and you're switching context all the time. As a startup, don't do that. Don't do general things with really broad conversational openings. No, I'm not commenting on you. I'm saying for the group.
But what are you talking about in your example? Because you can jump.
No, but from a company perspective, if you want to develop something, it's really hard to, yes, that's what I mean. It's really hard to develop all of that stuff. So I think, as a startup or company perspective, it's really important to focus on one narrow vertical and do it really well. Just because the voice interface can understand all those things doesn't mean your application can do a good job on it.
Are you talking more about capital efficiency as well to keep your resources?
Yeah, that's part of it. And then part of it is just, just scope creep, from a startup perspective. It's just like do one thing, do it really well, and do it great with one conversational interface, and just stay there. I see too many companies that say we could do this, this, and this because Siri allows me to do it or Alexa allows me to do it. Just because you can do it in a startup world, most of the time you shouldn't. So it's really important to focus this stuff down. Even though the tools are great for it, it's just too hard as a startup.
And I actually was going to add this point too. There's a big difference between Siri and then the bots that we were kind of demoing. So Siri, Alexa, and Cortana, they're AIs. They can answer any question because they're connected to it. When you connect to a skill through Alexa skills, Cortana skills, anything like that, you're saying, okay, I want Alexa to be able to use my dialogues and incorporate everything. But the biggest mistake or misconception that I see when I'm working with customers is that through these SDKs, you're just all automatically going to get all of that knowledge in your bot no matter what. But that's why it's good to have a narrow focus, because it's really hard to create those. You don't want to recreate AI. You don't want to recreate what's already been made. So you want to be able to use the skills that Alexa or Cortana or Siri already know if you can. So working to have an all-encompassing bot is just you're recreating what someone else has already done.
Thank you, Heather. Sir?
Hi. Yeah, I'm Aaron Franco. I'm the CTO of NimbleStack. We build chatbots and provide professional services around that. So we're seeing the gold rush right now of text-based chatbots and voice-based chatbots, and it's been very distinct to this point, where text has lived on the web and voice has lived in devices like Alexa. But now we're moving into a market where we're starting to kind of blur these lines between these two categories, and I'm just wondering where you see the application of these devices like Alexa or the chatbot on the web. If I wake up in the morning and I pick up my phone, am I texting my bot or am I speaking to my Alexa to get my messages from my bot? And where do you see those verticals moving in the future?
All right, thank you for the question. Anybody want to take a shot at that?
Yeah, I would say that it should come to where you are. So wherever the most convenient is. Why not in the car when I get in the, it should, whatever it is, Skynet, I don't know. But there should be, right, these should be, we like, our chairwoman likes to use the word augmented intelligence, and I think that's a pretty cool concept because we're not trying to replace people, we're trying to make people better. So I think of these digital assistants as like your new second screen, right? So instead of having your second monitor or your second screen, your Netflix and whatever you're watching, football and you're watching ESPN for the stats, this becomes kind of a pervasive, it's about the API that's behind it, right? That's really what you want to access. And what you're talking about is what channel should I access it through, right? And I think it's wherever it's the most convenient. It could be through my TV if I happen to be sitting in front of my TV, right? It could be through, a device that's in my refrigerator, in my kitchen. Well, maybe refrigerator. Kitchen could be. It could be on my wrist, right? So I think it's interesting to find out, and I'll echo a point here. Is I also believe that just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. So I don't know if having microphones everywhere, listening for me asking questions is really kind of it might get a little creepy and invasive. So there's privacy issues there. We already know that about Alexa. I'm aware that she's on listening to everything I'm saying, and I don't really have the time to really put a packet sniffer in and see what is being sent up to Amazon. But it'll be interesting to see where the convenience and privacy and creep factor intersect.
All right, let's take that to a different section. I know there's a couple of questions here. I really need to get all the panelists involved here, please, so hold some of your questions. I'll come back to you. Dave, I'd like to get you involved a little bit here. Let's talk about some of the policy issues that you see from the legal perspective that could be a concern.
Some of them are really obvious, right? The intellectual property ownership issue was one of them. What are the obligations, the liabilities, and requirements of the particular entities that are providing the use of the technology? But I don't think that's the most interesting thing. And Lauren, you'll recall we were at an AI program together, and we talked about something that I think is really interesting that we all need to think about. For a lot of people, and you just alluded to this, for a lot of people, this is really scary stuff, right? It seems like it's intrusive. It can be creepy, to use your word. It also runs the risk of really transforming the labor intensity of virtually every business. So, so much of what we need to be thinking about from a policy perspective is, what do we do to change the way we teach, the way we learn? What are we going to do about the fact that, with the convergence of some of these technologies, in the next whatever number of years, 8 million truck drivers are going to be out of work? What are we going to do when the conversational technology is so good that we don't need humans in call centers anymore? And, my concern about that is a technology backlash. And I think, and I don't want to get political here at all, but I think part of the most recent election here, Brexit in the UK, is partly a realization that so many people are disenfranchised and they've lost their place in society. But instead of embracing new technologies, and you were talking about the need for the technology capabilities to fill the jobs that we can't currently fill, whether it's West Coast or East Coast, but instead we're talking about putting people back in coal mines. And I think that, from a policy perspective, which obviously touches on law, touches on technology development, we've got to confront that because, who was it? Elon Musk said a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it's more than that now, that 10 years from now, we're going to have 85% unemployment in the United States. So if we don't confront this and really change our entire analysis, my fear is that we're going to get people who are going to say, well, no, put a stop to this kind of innovation and let's go backwards, which is not good for anybody. And instead, we need to embrace this and change our education system, change the way we put people to work, et cetera. So, I think the policy implications are really significant.
Great. Heather, what's your perspective? Recently graduated from Duke. So how would you, what was your vision with some of your classmates? Do you share some of the same concerns?
For me, I think it actually comes up quite often. Biggest things with like AI is the ethical debate. Sure. There's so much going on around like the artificial intelligence and the algorithms that are going behind it. And for like, if you think about self-driving cars, people don't realize like all of the machine learning that goes behind it. But what about the person who had to choose like, okay, if we drive the car one way, like who do I hit if I have to? Like it's a real thing. Like they put in the bias, like whoever created that algorithm is creating a huge bias. It's their choice of like what is correct. And they might have research behind it, but for me, that's like a huge thing that comes up. And I think that's where a lot of, at least my classmates, they were worried about it as well. Like everyone's like, yay, let's go create and like be developers and whatnot in my classes. But at the same time, it's like, where's the limit and how do we regulate it and make sure that we're not being invasive, we're not like putting our ethical like feelings on to other people and like making those decisions for them.
But I also would assume that every one of your classmates with reasonable scores and a CS degree also got jobs. Every single one of them, right? Probably 5 offers deep too. That's the best, that's my advice for my...
Give credibility, Howie, to the institution as well, though.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, but every school. Every school across the board and pretty much anyone with a CS degree at this point has 5 offers deep. It's pretty impressive.
Bruce, what's your perspective dealing with Watson? Do you guys come across any of these ethical issues or these types of questions inside when you're developing?
I do hear it quite often. I kind of take a counter view on this, to be honest. I'm not sure I see this any different than any other evolution, right? You had stagecoaches, everybody was making stagecoaches, people had corrals, they had horses, all of a sudden that went by the wayside and automobiles took their place, right? So people started working in factories. There's a natural transition where one thing goes away and another one, comes about. I kind of actually find it ironic, right? Back in the day, everybody had their own horse. Now you have to be wealthy to actually have a horse, right? Because you got to pay for stable fees and everything else. It's kind of an interesting turnaround. But I think it depends on how we utilize this. Like everything else in life, you can utilize this for good or evil. And I think if you utilize it for good and have it as being an assistant to people, then I don't see that there's this big conflict, right? Because right now, today, people use their phones, you've used your laptop, you interface with the web. What is that doing? It's all technology, right? But it's assisting you. So there's, the fact that there's intelligence behind it, it really isn't that much of a deviation off of what you're already dealing with, which are analytics, right? Or big data or any of these other areas. I mean, it's really nuanced. I mean, yes, it is different, it's more powerful, but it's the same stuff, basically.
I do have a question.
Can I just jump in for 1 second? I do want a counterpoint on that, right? I absolutely agree with you. It's an evolution just like everything else, and there's always been industries that have become technologically or structurally obsolete. I think the big difference today is the possibility, and I think we're seeing this, of disrupting multiple industries at the same time. And so it becomes a far more pervasive issue. And believe me, I'm not trying to stop the development. I think we have to have the development. And the difference is, do we put our heads in the sand and pretend that it is not going to have these dramatic implications, or do we recognize the dramatic implications and develop the appropriate policies, education system, et cetera, tax system that will respond to that so that we can keep moving forward without having people worried about that we're going to have 50% unemployment because we're not educating people for these new jobs. That's why these jobs are vacant, right? They're being unfilled is probably the better way to put it. And we're still educating people as though we're in the 20th century. I said 19th century. In the 20th century, and that's the part that worries me. And we have to continue to develop. And these questions and the ethical concerns that we just heard, we've heard these over and over again. We heard this 20 years ago, or maybe it's longer than that now, when we could create life outside of the womb. right? And we had the same ethical questions then, and we had the ethical questions with stem cell research. And so of course we're going to have these ethical concerns, but we have to respond to them. And that's my fear, that I don't believe that we are doing the hard work necessary to respond to that, so that as this technology develops, our society is going to develop along with it, and people will be brought along. Because if they're not brought along, it's going to damage everybody.
Yeah, the divide is worse, right? The reason why I was bringing up a CS degree, for anyone with computer science or math, statistics background, it's almost 0% unemployment. Really, it's almost like physically 0%. The reason why we will have 50% unemployment is that, I think in the latest jobs report, service and hospitality, leisure was like 38%, 40%, something like that, or a third of the workforce, something like that. That's where all the robots are going to flip burgers and check you into your hotels and stuff like that. And then that's the disconnect. And so you have 0% unemployment and, what is that, 38% of the workforce, something like that.
Well, I will tell you from my profession, I cover broad spectrum, retail, manufacturing, technology. Everyone has been impacted by technology. You see, manufacturing is not dead in the United States. People will tell you it is, but when you look at the base of it, it's much more intelligent manufacturing, and the head count is dramatically reduced. So I tend to echo Dave's concern that I think there's a lot of momentum that's going on, but I think the future, I'm not as confident looking back and seeing what the future held for people with a horse and buggy to where we're at today. I don't think we can project that. But I don't want to leave it on a sour note. I want to go back to some of the questions. Sir, you had a question before. Would you like to ask that?
Actually, it fits right in here. I was listening to you, Howie, say that there are no, you can't find the talent, there is no talent. And Tom, I was listening to you say that there are jobs that you can't even define the talent for yet. The whole notion of creating dialogue. I screwing around with chatbots. My favorite one is Doctor Strange, because it was written by guys who write movies. They actually know how to construct dialogue. It's got nothing to do with technology. I mean, obviously, the underlying thing. I'm very interested in the jobs that technology demands that have no direct connection to technology. What is that new field of making humans more comfortable with machines, getting machines to have personalities and really talk, constructing dialogue, structuring information so it's always retrievable by the API, all of that kind of stuff. Are there enough people there, or do we even know who we need?
Comedians, script writers, no kidding around. That's like what you need. You need script writers and you need people who could write comedy. I mean, that's what human interaction is, right?
Well, I would say that there's unknown. I mean, I don't think there was such a thing as a job title where you were involved in building a self-driving car. I read an article the other day that the going salary is $10 million a year. If you know anything about how to work on an automated vehicle, right?
And the average machine learning scientist or engineer in a startup in an acquihire, someone who's acquiring for technology, it's more than $2 million a head on top.
Yeah.
But let's interact though. Seriously, when you talk about those numbers, how many people really can fit that bill?
That's the thing. That's the thing. Yeah. There's these new titles for which there's 100 people on the face of the earth that can do it, right? That's going to replace.
And this panel are 5 of them.
Yeah.
Like even when I was looking for colleges a few years ago, there weren't even many statistics undergrad majors. It was only master's programs. It was only PhD programs, and we're just moving towards that realm of data is becoming popular, and now comp sci and statistics are coming together. We're making data science and things like that. They're so brand new for undergraduate degrees that it's going to take some time before we can even get the job pool for that.
I think also that it's a matter of emotional intelligence as much as it is artificial intelligence, because we have to make sure that emotional intelligence is built in to the whole concept of these kinds of solutions that are being developed today.
Sir, pink shirt, your second pink shirt? Sorry, David, but he's got a lighter pink shirt than you, so he's comfortable in his own skin.
Yeah, my question is about artificial intelligence. In one chatbot, normally you use a classifier, and you have a set of rules that okay, if it is if it is related with the weather, I put one answer. What is the way to make that flexible, reinforcement learning, or what kind of technology do you think that it is going to help us with that? And the second question is how we are going to protect the learning of that algorithms, because if you use artificial intelligence, it's going to be difficult to interpret that learning.
Do you understand the question, folks?
Yeah, I mean, I could. So the first question you had was kind of about what type of learning algorithm to use. I actually think reinforcement learning is a good one for, I think, I'm interested in building some software where that training of the conversation could be machine to machine. So that's something that's, and I think reinforcement learning is a appropriate algorithm for that. Question about protecting the training.
Yeah, it's more about if you try to learn NLP and you make a classifier, it's going to learn words, for instance, the gender, will make some exclusions, and it could be dangerous for the chatbots.
Are you saying that because it would be leaking PII, personal information?
Yeah, or make some exclusions
like bias,
about the
so
gender.
Like gender bias and things like that.
Oh, I think that goes back to the trade-off. I mean, if you want these to be truly personalized, like on one hand, yeah, I want it to know everything about me so it can augment my life and make sure I don't miss a meeting or an opportunity for something. But I remember a couple of years ago on my birthday on Google, I went to Google something and it didn't say Google, it said, "Happy birthday, Tom." And I thought, wow, oh wait, that's creepy. And it was one of those, again, just because you can do it, I don't know if you should do it, right? Like, okay, I get that you know a lot about me. I don't know that I want to be reminded of it. I think that's probably one of the most pressing ethical questions. And it's probably a very personal question. It might vary. And I think the important thing from the technologists and people implementing that is you got to give the choice. You got to give the choice to the consumer, and you got to be really transparent, because nobody reads T's and C's. Everybody knows you don't read T's and C's, right? Terms and conditions, right? You just sign up because the thing you want is really good, and you just hope that the information isn't used against you or in some creepy way. But I think that's kind of, to me, the most pressing ethical question here.
I'll give you a direct use case. So great example, Facebook, in using their messenger, you can see demographics. You can see things like gender and age and things like that, based on permissions, of course, and things like that. So in human resources and jobs, that's illegal. You can't use any information like that because it implements bias. So it's a great example. Just because Facebook passes it doesn't mean you do anything. So you could shut that off. You could say, you can't shut it off on Facebook's end, but you could say, I don't accept that. I don't look at it. I don't store it. So it doesn't become part of your learnings at all because it's not even in the data.
Let me jump into that section. Dave, what's your thoughts on the security aspect? Is there a cybersecurity component to what we're talking about here?
Well, there's no question about that. The privacy policy implications, obviously, from a legal perspective, people concerned about the access to their private information. So all of these aspects of cybersecurity have to be built in to the things we're doing in Internet of Things, in data, in machine learning, et cetera. There's no any question about that.
Okay. Sorry, yes, you had your hand raised. You're looking around, it's you I'm talking to. Thank you.
Not quick, but you talked about the evolution of industries, the policy associated with those industries. I'm old enough where fax machines came into the office and they were the coolest, hippest, most way out things in the world. And today, fax machines, you have to go read the manual to figure out how to make it work anymore. So I think the big difference is that technology is turning over so much faster than it has before. So, and to put the panel on the spot here, many of you may be obsolete in the next 10 or 15 years. What do you do about retraining?
How do you feel about that comment, folks?
Yeah, so I'll take that one. So I think it's interesting because I think retraining is an interesting dilemma. I think the issue that we're seeing, at least in this country, I can't speak for other countries, is that we don't really focus enough on how we implement that retraining, right? People talk a lot about it. Oh, it's easy, you know, you lost your job in the factory, you just get retrained. But then there really isn't a solution to go do that. Now, what I would tell you is fundamentally is people that, you know, have a reasonable amount of intelligence could go out there and they could get retrained. The issue is, where's the program to go do that? So I'm not, personally me, I'm not concerned about what will happen 10, 15, I will retrain myself, right? I mean, you know, because part of this too is, it gets into, all right, do I want to work? Do I want to survive? Do I want to feed my family? You betcha. So guess what? I'm going to pony up. You know, I've programmed in 11 different languages, right? I've gotten into things like semaphores, which probably, somebody raise their hand if they know what a semaphore is in the room. All right, we got a few people. But the point is, you know, I think the problem is we got to have that facilitation, and I don't think we have that right now, and that's the missing piece. It's not that people won't do it and can't do it, it's they don't have that place to go to get retrained.
Can I take a counter argument on that, though? With technology coming possibly to the rescue, or assistance anyway? I mean, there's never been a time where the most high-end free training capabilities are available online to everybody. You know, it started with Khan, maybe from Khan Academy, right? But definitely Stanford. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing what you can, if you have the motivation. I mean, not everybody can do it, but literally, if you can go to a library, you can get on a shared computer, you can get on the internet, and you could spend a few hours a night if you wanted to learn about this. Now, I don't know that everybody has the proclivity to do it, or, you know,
You'd be surprised. I actually did research on that, on open online courses, like Coursera, Khan Academy. And I talked to people who are taking this class in Africa, who are taking it in Asia. Like, there are so many places, like most people, a lot of people have access to internet, so it's becoming easier to access these online courses. They're usually free. What it comes down to is, how do we value them in society? If you get a certificate, does it matter? Like, is that something you want to put on your resume, or does it look bad? Like, right now we don't have any value on it in society, but will it replace colleges and lower like debt and things like that? It's a huge thing.
Question: how many people in here had blue collar family background? Right, blue collar family background, right? I can tell you the pool's only so big for technology on the supply side. Demand side. So there's a whole side of the population. Yes, they do have the access to it, but they don't have the roadmap.
Right, exactly.
Right? And that's a big problem. So all I ask is, when I talk to people in this space, you have to put on a different color, you have to put on different glasses when you're answering that question. I understand, I respect the perspective, and I think it's the best thing that's ever happened with technology. But I still come back to Dave's point. There is a huge tidal wave coming. And the people who are in the trades probably could survive quite well, but there's going to be a big part that can't.
Yeah, but the opportunities for training are there. Heather, we were here last week. We hosted an event about tech job recruiting. And one of the topics that we talked about on the panel was the concept of dev boot camps or developer boot camps, where you can get a certificate, and how are companies, both startups to very large companies, how are they handling that, and how are they recruiting and working with boot camp graduates versus someone from a traditional CS program. So there are, in addition to the free courses, you know, very, I think, reasonably priced programs if someone's willing to dedicate, you know, 8 weeks or 12 weeks, and there's jobs out there.
There are, but Howie, my point is there's only a limited amount.
Oh, definitely.
Before you bring too much supply in, and then that $10 million salary is going to come down to $15,000.
No, not at that level, because the guys who are earning that are, like you said, there's only 100 in the world.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we also don't really even focus on trade jobs in our education system anymore, right? Like that's one thing. Like, there's only so many jobs, but we don't actually teach students now, like, how to fix their car, how to do any,
how to bake a cake,
that's a societal issue.
Yeah, exactly.
I do want to get back to a point. If there's not, let me just ask this. Tom, you mentioned before the ups and downs of the bots. What do you see as the next generation fix to make it a more user-friendly and really a truly valuable piece of resource for an end user?
I have to say, I honestly don't know. I would say this is probably where the biggest opportunity is, and I think we're going to see it from some of the most, I think this is the place to innovate and to differentiate. I think whoever solves that, I think is going to, you know, to hold a key. You know, I really, there's got to be, the content has to be there first, though. The thing that you want to have answered is probably the most important thing, right? So you have to have the asset that the person wants. Like, the weather is very important. You know, there's all. So then it's about how does the machine understand the real intention of what the person is requesting, regardless of the way that they're specifically saying it. Very difficult, and that's where human brains are very good at. So neuroscientists, by the way, I was going to give a shout out to any neuroscientists out there. That is also a field that ain't going away anytime soon. You know, I don't know if you guys know, but neural networks, which I studied in the 90s. They were originally created to model the brain. They were meant to be a tool for neuroscientists to understand how the brain worked. And then somebody realized, wait a minute, these constructs are actually good at discovering patterns. And that's when they became kind of a software construct. But the roots are in modeling the brain. And I think we have a long way to go. And I don't know who has the answer to that yet.
My experience is when I'm dealing with a credit card company and I need to get a complex situation, because I'm talking through the phone, talking through that digital assistant is extremely, extremely frustrating for me.
It is.
And you know, how many times you guys say representative, please, before it actually gets you through to the next level? Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Hold on, ma'am. I'm sorry I ignored you all evening. Not intentionally.
That's okay. I want to know if I can come to your group next week, Tom, and show you how to do it for finance.
Okay.
Done.
Sure.
Did you have a question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so basically my question was more along the lines of, how do you compensate for the fact that when people are asking a question, they may not know the question they want to ask?
Excellent question. Good point, folks.
Narrow.
Yes. Yeah.
Narrow niche. That's if you narrow it down. You know, if you look at jobs, again, that's my niche that we focus on. You know, there's different ways to ask for a job or who's hiring or whatnot, but it's very specific, and I can train that in. I don't know. You might disagree. 50,000 conversations or something like that. We'd have to see what the number is, but if you want to train, you know, weather or bigger general AI, you know, you might need, you know, billions of conversations. So.
So people have biases, right? So the questions that they ask, not about things like the weather, but the next generation, which is basically what AI is going to do, which machine learning is supposed to deliver to you something better than you can deliver to yourself, right? In finance, right? So how do you overcome those biases? How do you teach Watson or Go or whoever? How do you teach them to overcome those biases of the people that are actually using these chatbots to accomplish them?
Give an example of a bias when you say bias.
So women tend to live a lot longer than men do. So they need to fund a longer retirement than men do. Women tend to be more conservative in their investments. So therefore their natural bias is going to leave them short of money to fund their retirement.
So does that mean they ask questions differently?
Yeah, they do. They have
different questions they want to have answered, or they ask questions differently?
They ask questions differently.
And they don't ask the right one.
Tom, are you married?
They don't ask the right one.
You should know that question. Answer that question.
A lot of it comes down to like how you train it, right? Like what data you have.
A lot of times when people ask questions, there are underlying assumptions. There are underlying assumptions embedded in their questions, okay, that can affect what they're asking. And as a planner and a problem solver, a human one, the first thing I do is gently but firmly challenge some of those assumptions and unpack them, et cetera, and then we kind of come back to the core question. Is there a way that you can see in a chatbot type environment, recognizing when there are underlying assumptions in a question and dealing with that first before versus just giving a an answer.
Okay, so I would say this goes back to how much privacy are you willing to give away? Now, I can build a model of you very simply. I could know your demographic. I can know that you might have an elderly person, parent living at home with you. You might have a child that's about to go off to college. You might be nearing retirement. And so I might have more context. I think that's a key part we've been missing on, is context. That's a really important thing about all of these chat interfaces, is understanding the context. I meant to point it out when I gave my little stupid demo there, but I used the word it, like, how is it doing? That's a very complicated thing for a computer to unravel. What the heck do you mean by it? So managing the context is important. That's within a conversation, but within a human being, understanding more about the context, understanding their background might give you insight into what's underlying the question of what they're trying to get answered. And I think that's a very important aspect.
Tom, hold on there. I'm going to let this young lady here ask a question, Dave point, and then I'm going to wrap it. Okay? There's going to be networking afterwards. You can ask any questions afterwards. Ma'am?
So to that question, isn't part of it, if you think of going to a doctor, sometimes people go to the doctor and ask for what they think the treatment is that they need. And the role of the doctor is really to find out what the problem is, not to let the patient determine what the cure is. So isn't part of training the bots working with not so much just to get the context of the individual situation, but to understand how to put a question rather than answering the question?
That's exactly the point that I wanted to make. So thank you. The analogy to a doctor.
And now I'll take my $50 now.
There you go. The analogy to a doctor is apt. And I think about that as a lawyer. Clients come to me, they often don't know the right question to ask. And so when I was sort of joking about emotional intelligence earlier, I think that's part of it. You have to know how to be a good listener to understand what's really at the base of the question. And so I think, and I'm not the technologist up here, so I'm going to defer to you guys, but I think that's the subsequent iterations, right? That's what's going to come from machines learning more and more and more, and that's an evolution that doesn't come today. Is that a fair statement?
But I also think it's about modeling, right? And data in your repository. So if I have a ton of data on you, and you start asking me questions, I can go back and do a search and say, okay, and through Watson we can do this, right? I can analyze your profile and figure out, okay, this is kind of where you fit in the spectrum, and these people in the spectrum don't normally ask this question, right, that might be relevant. Or it could be in past iterations where we've had conversations, you haven't focused on this area, or you ask a question and I go back and say, all right, there's 5 permutations, they're asking this, but the derivative of that is A, B, C, and D, right? It's all programming. It's all programming data. If you got enough of that stuff, that can be done. But again, it's time consuming, it's teaching, right? Learning. So it'll get there. It's a process.
Thank you, Bruce.
Yep.
Okay. All right, I'll let you have one last question.
It kind of builds off the last question. Hi, my name is Melissa. I'm a reporter with The Street, and I am curious to hear your thoughts about how this AI technology integrates with healthcare in the future, because we're seeing a lot of modern medicine and the intersectionality of technology.
Yeah, so I can start off with that. We do a lot of work in healthcare with Watson, particularly in cancer research, but we also have a lot of other areas. We work with a company in Boca Raton that is a dermatologist, and they had access to a whole bunch of medical data around dermatology. They ingested that information, and then they provide it along with their current app. They do an API call to Watson. Watson will come back and say, based on the patient data, based on our journal information, all the data repositories that we have, we think you should prescribe this to that particular patient. It'll come out with basically 3 recommendations. It'll rank them, percentage order, 85%, we think this is what you should go with. But ultimately, and this is to come back to the original, one of the questions we started with, the fear of machines taking over, it's the doctor's decision on which thing to give the patient, right? The doctor may say, well, I think choice 2 is better because this type of patient may have an issue with the first option, or there's some other underlying reason. And also, oh, by the way, in that scenario, the doctor is the one ultimately liable. He's signing the script. He's going to recommend a prescription. But, there's a lot of technology in that, and that's where it gets back into the more focused you are in an area, the more value you can provide. If you tried to go out there and provide a general be-all medical application, forget about it. It would be like this deep, because you would need too much information. It would be too much processing. But when you can get it down into a niche where you're focused on a particular type of cancer or a particular area like dermatology, now you can start to add real value to it. So I think it's really companies stepping up in these different arenas to specialize in that. You'll see that value pop up. We have a demonstration down at Astor Place. If you go watch it, they show a diagnosis that normally would have taken a hospital doing a lot of extensive testing, like 6 days to diagnose this issue with the patient. And Watson was able to come back in I think it was 6 minutes or something with the answer saying, hey, this is what this patient's dealing with. So I think that's the other aspect on the medical side, the time savings, which, not in every case, but in a lot of cases, particularly as life or death, time is important, right? It's not like, oh, I get, a year from now I can address this disease. You really want to get on top of it. So I think there's a lot of room there from an AI perspective in that arena.
Okay, thank you, Bruce, for that perspective. And I'm going to close it down here. I'm going to ask the panelists 30 seconds or less, one major takeaway, and we have to answer the question, why the female voice?
I know the answer to that.
Howie, we'll start with you.
Focus, focus, focus. It's the main thing that I've learned from both in early stage investment and kind of operating early stage companies is the more narrow your focus, especially with new technology like chatbots and AI and machine learning, the clearer you'll be to investors, the clearer you'll be able to measure success, and the easier it will be for you to kind of build something great. Why female voice? Same reason why I think female customer service. You tend not to yell at females. If you're an angry guy, you don't usually yell at women. At least that's my personal opinion of it.
We'll take a vote of who had the best answer for that one at the end. Tom?
I would say that my advice is to do what Nike said and just do it. Coming from a startup background, and I work at IBM, but I'm supposedly leading a startup within IBM, and I am. And really, you got to just go do it. Put it out there, put out version 1, put all the caveats on it, say this is a work in progress, and test it out. See how it works, see where people get confused. It's very easy. By the way, probably Cortana has it, definitely Watson has it, Watson Conversation. It keeps a log of anytime somebody asked a question that Watson got confused by. So it makes it very easy then to go back and say, okay, now this is where the human comes into the loop and says, oh, wait a minute, you might not have known, but really what the person was asking was this, and you basically connect that. Now you've trained it on a different way that you didn't expect they were going to ask the question. Anyway, just go do it. I heard the reason that female voices are used goes back to when in the Air Force or military, when they were making in the cockpit, everything's automated and electronic, that in the pilot's headset they would hear instructions, and that they found through all studies that the women's voice was more authoritative. I know I'm going to get huge street cred from the women. Yeah, come on. Yeah. That's true though. That's what I heard.
That's a winner. So good luck to the rest.
And I'm dropping the mic on that. I'm out.
Definitely going off your point, just put it out there. The best thing you can do with bots, and probably one of the bigger mistakes, is to wait 6 months until it's perfect bot, because at that point you really have no idea what your customers might use or say. So putting it out there at V1 and saying disclaimer, this is not supposed to be perfect, and guiding the user through. So putting buttons saying here are options of things you can say. We found that people actually much prefer buttons than typing, and then in medical industry they actually prefer speech. So it's really trying to make your bot accessible and figuring out what your customers will want most. And in terms of why a woman, why not? Yeah. I don't
one too. Bruce, I want you to add one more thing. You talk about your takeaway, why female, but what's the next exciting thing coming out of Watson? If you wouldn't mind sharing that.
Sure. So let me just talk about just very quickly key takeaway. I think it plays off of what the other folks have said, and that is, just start playing around with this stuff. As an example, we offer these things called developer journeys, and there's actually a retail chatbot. You can go out. We have the code repository on GitHub. We leverage Python, which is probably the most used language for doing chatbots out there, I would say. And we also leverage Slack as well to do the communication, but you can pick other venues as well. But I think it's really getting out there and you know, getting immersed in the community, figuring out, and the beauty in today's age, right, is leverage what other people have done, right? You got things like Stack Overflow, you got GitHub. Don't, you know, isolate yourself and try and do this in a vacuum. Go out there, use resources. You can learn a lot quicker, see how other people are doing these things and implementing them. See what you like, see what you don't like. That's the other best way to kind of figure out what you want to do. As far as the female voice, I'll be honest, I have no idea.
Good.
But I will research it now, because now I'm maniacal about these types of things. I want to know the real answer.
Ask Watson.
As far as, you know, Watson, where it's going in the next type of thing, I think some of these services that we offer are going to be evolution. So as an example, we have a service under Watson called Alchemy, and it can actually recognize images, but it's, I'll say, reasonably basic. It'll go in and say, okay, it looks at different pictures, say this is a car, this is a boat. I think that type of technology is going to continue to evolve. And oh, by the way, just as a, you know, news flash, this shouldn't be, you know, new news to anybody, right? But there are technologies that we don't see that other people are using. Wink, wink, the government, right? Before I got involved in what I'm doing now, I did programming for spy satellites and GPS stuff and all that kind of fun stuff.
Do tell, please.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of neat things that go on, but one of the things I always tell people, if you want to understand where the industry is going, watch what DoD is doing. If they're grabbing onto something, because a lot of people don't realize, it's like your jet engine, all from DoD, the internet, despite what Al Gore claims, DoD, cell phone, DoD, I could go down the list. A lot of these things that people use every day, you can thank DoD for it. That's why we have them.
Great, thank you. Dave, last word.
I'm going to do it the other way.
Sure.
I think that it's a female voice because it's less scary to people, less threatening, and I think that's more accepting to people. What's that? Mom? Could be. This is going to sound terribly political, so I apologize in advance. But the key takeaway for me is don't elect stupid people. And the separation of church and state was the single greatest contribution to American politics ever. Let's respect that.
I won't comment, Dave. You and I are different
We're on different sides of the
aisle.
aisle. But we're still friends.
Anyway, I want to thank this phenomenal panel. Great job. Please give a round of applause. Lauren, would you like to say goodbye to everybody? Or thank you again for the opportunity. I always cherish these moments. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good night.